Thanks so much for joining us today to talk about your run for Portland School Board. I think we should start off by having each of you give just a 1 or 2 minute statement about why you're running and why you think voters should pick you. And why don't we start with Derrick, if you wouldn't mind going first.
Yeah, so Derrick Peterson, running for Portland School Board, Public School Board, Zone 3, and born and raised here in Portland. I actually went to Portland State University, got my degree in Administration of Justice. Worked for the Sheriff's Office. I'm a retired Chief Deputy of Corrections for the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, and served close to 36 years. So that's quite a bit of time. I ran and managed over 400 personnel in a $30 million budget. And I have a pretty big resume within my within the educational environment. And so during that time, I've been a diversity instructor for that 25 years, taught management classes and diversity classes in various colleges, and am on the social sciences board at a local college. I've also coached as well. So I think that those are significant points as to my experience and being able to run large budgets, understand managing personnel and those kind of things. I have a long history of community involvement and worked with various organizations such as Portland Safety Action Coalition, Word is Bond, and NAACP, and several more. And that was around police reform, some of the issues that are going on after the George Floyd death. I've been involved since January with running this campaign. Have over 35 people to include, but not limited to 7 of the Portland Public School Board members, former Portland Multnomah County Commissioner Diane McKeel, State Representative Bynum, and former Portland Public School Board member Bobby Reagan. In addition, I have endorsements from several unions and organizations to include Stand for Children and Willamette Women Democrats. I also have support from community leaders, civil rights leaders, parents, teachers, and students. And these relationships will be crucial for me as I hopefully win this election going in. So I think a culmination of my life experience, the experiences I have in the community, the current relationships I have, and my work experience make me the best candidate as I look forward to prioritizing and attacking situations like student mental health, school safety, student achievement gaps, especially those people of color. And also being retired, I'm really excited about swimming upstream here and looking at how I can keep kids from getting justice involved. So those are the reasons why, in my experience, why I feel that I'm the best candidate for Portland School Board.
Great, thank you very much. Patte, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running? And
yes, I'm a retired teacher. I taught in Portland Public Schools for 20 years in the primary grades, K1, 2. Before that, I got interested in education first by being in cooperative preschools with my own children, and then from there went on to education. I've been retired now for 20 years, and in those years, I have worked part-time for Lewis and Clark College supervising student teachers, and I have also been a docent at the Art Museum, where we did a lot of work there on diversity and inclusion. I don't have any endorsements, and a lot of that is because I signed up late 2 days before the deadline. I didn't get anything in the voters pamphlet, and I have actually not done my homework on that. So I went after the union endorsement and still have not heard back from them. I actually emailed them the other day and said, please let me know one way or the other. So don't know what's happening with that. I just have, I'm retired, as I said, and I'm just ready to do more with education. COVID kind of cut out both my working with Lewis and Clark and the Art Museum, and I'm just ready for the challenge of the school board. I met with the superintendent. I'm excited about the vision. Of course, no vision is just vision. You have to get it done. You have to work on it. And I'd like to be part of that. I'm very interested in social justice issues. I belong to Surge, Showing Up for Racial Justice, and have done a lot of reading with them about Black Lives Matter issues. I'm also very interested in LGBTQ issues. I have a non-binary child who is an adult and works with non-binary children, and so knows of those needs, especially the trans children at this point, or trans people, all up and down the age range. I just feel like I could be maybe a different voice on the board. I generally am able to get along with people. I usually have a calm way of managing, and I just think I could be an asset.
Great, thank you very much. We're just kind of flip between the two of you about who goes first. So Patty, this question will be for you. Do you have 2 or 3 priorities that you would have for your time on the board?
Yes, I think my main priority would be social justice, particularly the BIPOC community. I know that area has been underserved, and I know we've been trying to serve it better, but it doesn't ever seem to work. I would like to see the schools be welcoming places for everyone. I hope to see more counselors, more social workers. I would like it so that children who are homeless or suffering can find a safe place at the schools. That means area for healthcare, an area for being able to get food, help with housing. I guess my priority is all the people who actually need the most help, and that I would like to see us put our energies there and our money.
Great. Thank you. Derrick, how about you? Do you have 2 or 3 priorities that you would bring to your time on the board?
Yeah, I think that student mental health is one of the big drivers here, coming at post pandemic, and the issues around that, and getting kids back in the classroom. Major anxiety issues have come up. Things that they had to face at home, things that they had to deal with just personally, and being sheltered, not having that social activity. Major issues have come up with that. And I think when we talk about adults and the wraparound services and the counselors that are needed out there, it's equally as important to look at our youth and say, are we going to pour into them now so that in the future they are whole, ready to move out into the workforce, or continuing education. And so I think that's a huge part of what we need to be looking at as board members, to make sure that there's services available, that there's funding available for that. I'm also interested in making sure that our kids aren't justice involved. That's extremely important to me. And when we talk about gun violence or violence period across the board, and again, it dovetails into mental health issues, we know that there's a spike in bullying, there's a spike in frustrations in the classroom, and then you have the gun violence outside the schools that's going on. So I think it's extremely important that we bring people together to have those conversations, and especially students, they need to be a part of that conversation as to what that's going to look like. Are we going to look at a model like Portland street response or something in that manner? So we're not looking at necessarily the old SRO type of standard of policing or school police coming in, but kind of a remnant of that, or something that's kind of new and innovative to that extent, where they're not coming in with guns or uniforms where it upsets students or keeps them from really thriving in that environment. So I think it's important to kind of take a look at those kind of things. Need to put on always talk about equity lenses, and I think that it's important that we do a youth focused equity lens when we're bringing programs in to the situation. A lot of youth are not represented, and only through the lens are they represented. And so I was a part of bringing the equity lens at Multnomah County to use to make sure that there was equity across the board when we're putting policies in or addressing issues with staff.
And Derrick, can you explain a little bit more just kind of your concept of what kind of school resource officers could I guess what your vision of having them in the schools would look like? I mean, you talked a little bit.
Yeah, Portland Street Response I think is a great example of how we can bring people in that are trained, that have counseling experience, have a multitude of touch points within the system, both inward and outward, especially plugging our youth into different types of programs that are out there. I think that's extremely important. I know that Portland Police they had a school resource officers, an actual unit with that, and unfortunately, with the COVID issue and the riots downtown, the person that was showing up to the school were not trained. They had major issues and didn't have the involvement or the trust of the students. They hadn't built rapport. And so when you're peeling off staff to deal with other situations, that's an issue. And so we need people who are trained, who understand students, who are willing to build trust and relationship, and not just with the students, but with the faculty and the parents. So that would be an avenue that I think we could discuss to make sure that the students are okay with that kind of idea, and making sure that if we don't need to have guns or uniforms in the school, let's do that. But like I said, the biggest thing is making sure that there's someone who understands them, that has counseling experience, and it can plug them into wraparound services.
And these would be police officers?
They wouldn't necessarily not be police officers.
Okay.
That's something I'm very conscious of, that could be a major problem in our schools. So we need to have that conversation of what it looks like. Like I said, Portland Street Response, having people who aren't in uniform, who don't bring guns in, but have these skill sets that are predicated towards the students and the faculty and our parents. Yeah.
Okay. And Patte, what about you? What is your take on whether schools need either police officers back in schools or some alternate kind of outside security?
Well, from the research that I've done, it seems to me that having the police officers in the school hasn't made them that much safer. And I think that students do not want them back in. So SROs, I would say no, unless, as Derrick said, they're very well trained, but that sounds kind of like getting in a sociologist or a psychologist. And so do we want to spend money on an SRO rather than a psychologist? And if they are involved, they would have nothing to do with school discipline. It would strictly be safety, so that we don't get the police involved with discipline and perhaps leading from, a minor incursion that a school could have taken care of into going into juvenile detention. We just don't want that. So it's a very, Derrick probably knows way more about it than I do, but from what I've read, it does not sound like a good idea, and it doesn't sound like it makes schools safer.
Thank you. Patte, part of the job of a board member is to oversee the superintendent. Can you give your thoughts in terms of how, either what grade you would give Superintendent Guerrero's leadership, or just go into some kind of detail about the what you see coming from Superintendent Guerrero? Are you satisfied with his leadership at district?
Yes, I am. I'm excited about the vision. I am willing to give him some space to have not achieved the vision yet, going through the years of COVID and trying to get us back on track. So I'm excited about him. I would watch to see what's happening. Are things really changing? Are the things that we hope happening? But right now, I feel very good about working with him.
And are there any particular successes or concerns that you would point to in terms of his leadership at the district?
Well, most of what I know is what I've read in the materials that have come out, and they are very strong on social justice, especially making sure that BIPOC community is well served. And as I said in the beginning, that's something that's very important to me. And we've been talking about it in Portland for a long time. And many superintendents have been talking about it. And so maybe it's going to actually happen this time. And I'm hopeful.
Okay, great, thank you. Derrick, same question for you. Can you evaluate Superintendent Guerrero's performance, or give any details on what you've either liked or have not liked about his leadership?
Well, having a robust conversation with him, I tell you, I can't give him a grade at this point because, as Patte was saying, the pandemic came. A lot of things he was trying to implement didn't get a chance to take hold. And so I'm in a wait and see pattern to see if some of the things that he's implemented will come to fruition, to see some results that we're looking for, especially those achievement standards for Black and brown kids. So I'm extremely anxious to see how that plays out. In talking with him, I see that he's brought in an all-star cast of administrators to help drive this vision. People from all across this country, or the Northwest. He's been able to attract some of the best talent, and when you're able to do that, you have some hope that some of the things they're implementing are going to come to fruition. So impressed by the staff that he's put around him. And I'm also impressed with the leadership around counselors and psychologists, as Concordia College has been bought by University of Oregon, U of O, and there's the Bomber Institute that is funding counselors. They'll be able to do some inner work with those counselors who are going through that program with the Portland Public Schools. And so the dividends could pay off greatly with a partnership like that. So I see a lot of things in place. I want to see how they actually come around, and how they are implemented, and the success of those programs as we look at in the next year or two of them being fully implemented.
Great, thank you. Derrick, questions to you first. Enrollment at PPS has plummeted in recent years, which has significant implications for funding, school enrollment, and just the robustness of a program you can offer to students. What, if anything, do you think you as a board member can or should do on any of those fronts to help shore up the district's viability?
Oh, and sorry, this is Julia Silverman. I cover education for PPS. If I could add to Helen's question, I'm just wondering where you stand on the possibility of potential school closures down the road. PPS has a large number of elementary schools that have fewer than 400 kids, which is fairly uncommon. just for economies of scale, most districts like to keep elementary schools at 400 and above. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we definitely see the issues around students, the student enrollment going down, and I think it's been going down for the last 4 years or more, and this discussion needed to take place yesterday, really, as we look forward and making sure that is it time to actually downsize. And I think it has to be talked about amongst the public, the students, the faculty, our parents, and our school board, to make sure if we're heading down that road, to do it in a manner that is just and right. Because you start shutting down schools, which one is it going to be, and where are you going to reallocate resources? And I think that's extremely important if you're not looking ahead, especially those schools where there's less fortunate kids and parents living in areas where school enrollment is taking a major hit in most cases. So how are we going to be doing that and making sure that it's in a done in a careful manner, a thoughtful manner, as that's concerned. But I don't think we just jump the gun as enrollments can go up and enrollments can go down. So we just need to be very, very mindful of that and have a complete plan in place of how to roll that out.
Great,
And I
thank
didn't know if I got your question.
we may go back to elements of that. It's an enormous question, so we can definitely take a couple bites at it. Patty, how about you? What are your initial thoughts about what to do about declining enrollment and the implications to schools and keeping them open?
Well, my wish would be to keep open as many as we could, rather have smaller schools than overcrowded schools. I also remember when schools, we thought enrollment was going down and then it went back up and we'd closed some schools. So you have to be very, very cautious and very able to see the future, I guess. I don't know. It's very, very tricky. But as much as possible, I would definitely try to keep schools open as long as possible as you look for the solution. I don't know if it, I guess you'd have to look at a budget. How much does it cost to keep a school running under for a while? Is it worth all the change it does to consolidate? Those are the kinds of things you'd have to look at.
Great, thank you.
Can I add? I'm not sure what the district is doing about exit interviews when families are no longer having their kids go to school. I think it's in a lot of jobs, a lot of companies, they have these exit interviews, and I would love to hear what is going on and not just rumor or innuendo as to what that looks like and how the district can improve to make sure that the rest of some of the other families are inclined to move out. So that's one of the things I would love to see, is a robust exit interview with families and students.
Right. Yeah. Let's find out. Is it because we really have fewer students, or because, because they're growing up like neighborhoods? Finally, you don't have little ones around anymore. It just gets older. Or is it dissatisfaction with the schools, so they're moving to the suburbs? Why is it happening? And then again, it might go back up again. Things are cyclical. Anyway, they run in cycles. So yeah, that's a very thorny question. So I don't know.
To follow up a little bit more, I guess with Portland with Portland voters, they have consistently approved levies, bonds. Very rarely have they turned them down. Is going to voters for either an increase in the levy or anything along those lines, do you think that is a fair question to ask of voters? And I think, how do you go first on this one?
Yes, I think it's a fair question to ask the voters. Simply, I think the schools are the most important thing a community can have. And I think most voters feel that way too, especially in a big city where there's, I was going to say young families, but people are grandparents, they care about schools. So yes, I would not hesitate going to the voters. I would have to explain why. Why do we need that now when we seem to need it all the time, and be able to show what we were doing.
And so this would be over and above what's already, what taxpayers are already paying in levies and bonds.
Yes, if you could show that it's necessary, yes.
Okay. And Derrick, same question for you.
One more time, the question.
Sure.
Please.
Basically, I'm wondering, Portland voters are paying and have paid levies and bonds for many years. They rarely turn them down at the ballot box. Is that something that would you look to increase potentially the rate that taxpayers are paying in order to help either keep schools open or ensure the robustness of offerings?
Yeah, there's a couple of things going on there with. I really appreciate our voters, our community for rallying around the schools. And when there's a levy or a ballot measure or something that comes up for funding, they're more than generous, right? And so there has to come a point in time where we are looking at our resources and how well we're using those resources, and are we doing it adequately before we go back to the voters and ask for more. At this point, there's a lot of things going on with the taxes for arts, and I'm not sure if that money is being used in an equitable way or being used at its best. So some of the funding that is even coming in now, how is it being used, and making sure that it's being used correctly, and then can we go back to the voters for some things that need to be shored up. But I would be hesitant to keep coming back. I wouldn't hesitate to go to the voters if there's something that we really need for the students. Otherwise, unless we can't do without, that kind of deal. So that's extremely important to me, to make sure that voters are treated right and respected for the money they're already have signed up to give for our Portland schools.
Derrick, I think this question would go to you first. I'm just curious, in this role, who do you feel you would be serving?
Well, I'm serving the community. It's the students really come first, because that's what it's about. The education and the services they're getting, whether it's a counseling service to what kind of, up-to-date books, to making sure that the testing is correct. They're having teachers that are showing up and have students at the head of what they want to do, and make sure that they're doing the best job they can. And so it wraps around students, but it spirals out to so many different things that affect that situation. Environment is very important. So if schools aren't environmentally safe or environmentally pleasing, where you have opportunities for students to come in and say, I'm proud of this school, and it's comfortable. And so you have places where you're stimulating their educational experience and making it more enjoyable. And that's what I love about the high schools being revamped. That gives them opportunities. As I got a chance to talk to a couple of students, they're now proud of those schools. They tout them. They say, hey, and I love going to school because of the environment it has set, and the expectations are higher. So those are the things I'm looking at, and that's hopefully answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. And Patte, to you, who do you feel like you would be serving in this role?
The community, but I would say that the students first. I would want to make sure that the education was what they need. Of course, if you're serving the students, you have to have good teachers. So that means you have to serve the teachers to make sure they've got what they need for the students. I know we're trying to keep minority students so that our teacher population matches our student population. So that means we have to make sure they're supported so that they stay. We have to make sure that good teachers stay. But in the end, that's all serving students. Because that's the people we want to succeed. And they will succeed if they have a good place to be with good teachers and good support. And, I've been around for a long time teaching, and we've been talking about this for years. Every year we try to make it better. And so it's not as if I expect, oh, tomorrow it's going to be better because we have a new plan. I know it's going to be a lot of work, always. And you have a classroom dealing with 25 or 30 totally different people. And so you need a lot of support. And those children all need to be respected. And it's not easy. There's no silver bullet. And I admire, I don't know the superintendent that well, of course, but I admire his energy to try to get things done. I admire teachers for working really hard to get things done. It's not easy. I'm so glad to see more counselors come in, and all of that is serving children. And if you look at it bigger, I guess it's the whole community. When our children are happy, your parents are happy, the community is happy. So, but still, number one, student.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Patty, let me ask you about, are there any particular board decisions over the past couple of years or so that you either really disagreed with and felt like they went in the wrong direction, or, on the other hand, really agreed with, that you felt that they got something right?
Well, I have to admit that I have not been paying that much attention to the board. So I really don't know. That's something I should have looked at more. What I have been looking at is what the board came up with their vision statement. Mm-hmm. And there's not much in there I could disagree with. I might say, well, that's probably beyond what you can possibly do, but it's a great vision. Mm-hmm. No, I don't know of anything in particular that I disagree with.
Okay, thank you. Derrick, how about you? Is there any board decision from the past couple of years that really stuck with you for one reason or another?
Well, there's so many things that go on with some of these decisions, and I don't know a lot of them per se, but I think what I'm impressed with is that their relationship with the superintendent, and making sure that they were able to secure a competent superintendent that, like I said, draws the talent that we need in the public Portland schools to ensure that any programs that go forward are met with zeal and ingenuity and passion. And so those are the things that I really am ecstatic about when I see what the current members on the board are trying to do and navigate through, and to make sure that there's actually goals met. And if those goals aren't met, then we sit down with the superintendent and say, hey, these are the things that we're having a shortfall in. It's measurable to that extent, and they definitely have to be measurable, and sit down and make sure that we're all on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
I do know of one thing. In fact, I just heard the other day from a friend of mine who's a friend of a board member. And she said that this particular board member really got in trouble when wanting to open the schools earlier than they were open. And people were very, very angry with her. And I think that can happen. Of course, in hindsight, you might say, oh, yeah, we should have opened them earlier. But that's hindsight. And so I think for some people that was considered a bad decision, but you just have to know that sometimes people won't agree with you and have done the best thing you can do.
Well, that brings us to an interesting point, and if I could just follow up on what Helen said. Obviously there was the district is still really trying to recover from the prolonged COVID closures, which were among the longest in the nation. You're both running to replace Amy Constam, who was the only board member who, wanted to open schools earlier and provide more time in schools for students. What do you think you would have done if you had been on the board at that time?
Which one you want?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to specify. I think Helen, am I first to Derrick? I think.
Well, I really agree with Amy in retrospect of opening schools sooner rather than later, but it has to be a stair-step approach. There's students that I believe were in an environment where they were in a learning environment at home, but yet you had this contrasting situation where socialization was being challenged, and as we saw them coming back into school and some issues that have come up lately with bullying and beating people up, that's big. And so hindsight, what work do you do before you bring them back into the school, meeting with parents and seeing where they're at? And I know that the school district and the superintendent did some of that work, but I don't think it was extensive enough. They talked to several families to see what that looked like. So, they allowed some people to stay at home and some not. But eventually you have to get kids back into school for, if not just learning the social aspects of, they've lost out on 2 years of that. And it's devastating as we see that's happened across the country. So I'm proud of Amy for stepping up and being the lone voice in that situation. Again, as in the sheriff's office where I was at, we had to stair step it and not just go right at it, because you never know if the pandemic was going to take a turn for the worse again, and all of a sudden you have to shut back down. So you have to be very careful about that, very thoughtful about bringing students back in an environment where they're all together.
Thank you. And Patty, I guess same question. How do you think you would have voted? So not, knowing what you know now, but if you were there then.
Yeah, knowing what you know now makes a whole different situation. Yeah, I was supervising student teachers at that time when school closed, and those poor student teachers, it was time for them to do their solo teaching for 6 weeks so they could actually learn about discipline. And what do? They have to teach online with their mentor, who also doesn't have a clue what they're doing. So it was really, really difficult. And me trying to figure out Zoom to interview student teachers who weren't able to teach. I mean, the whole thing was so crazy. But I probably would have voted to stay closed. In retrospect, would have been better to open, but at that time, I think I probably would have voted to stay closed. But I do admire Amy. I didn't know it was Amy. I just knew it was a friend of a friend. But I appreciate that, she stood up for what she believed.
I appreciate that answer. Thank you. If I could ask too, I don't know if both of you have been following the ongoing negotiations with the Portland Association of Teachers and the district. They live stream on YouTube. It's very exciting, and I mean that seriously. One real point of contention has emerged around class size. The teachers union really wants to see caps on class size, and the district has been reluctant, in part because they say they want to be able to continue to stick with their equity budget funding lens and direct more money to schools that may serve a population that has higher needs. I'm wondering, where you stand on that. Do you think we need class size caps, or should we stick with, the current equity budget funding model? And that one is first for Patte.
What are they saying to cap it at?
Oh, it depends on the grade level. So I think, 24 for kindergarten, 25 for first, 26 for second, and so on from there. And then when you get to middle and high school, it's like 150 kids on your caseload, or 130 kids. I can't remember the exact number. I can look it up for you.
Yes, I definitely think it should be capped. I mean, OAEYC would say, 24 in kindergarten is crazy, but that's too much. You should have an 8. So, yes. I mean, if they said cap it at 12, I'd say it was too low. But yeah, that looks like a very reasonable cap to me.
And Derrick, same question to you. Where do you stand on class size caps versus the lens of let's not stick with a district-wide cap, but be able to direct more funding to perhaps higher needs schools?
Very controversial because to me, there's a need, like I said, for that reallocating budget for classrooms that are having more difficult times as far as how many students are in there, and do you have assistants, or how many counselors do you have in the school to provide other services? That's an extremely difficult situation if you are not looking at the caps. And I don't know if you can roll it or do something like that, but I think that if you're looking at a specific number, I just know that once you hit a particular number in the classroom, the environment can start going downhill, and the ability of the teacher to teach is impeded, and then the ability of the student to learn is impeded. So, and especially if you don't have other services within the context of that. So, I think you look at capping those as much as you can, and also looking at providing the resources for those schools that need more attention to those students who are having issues, and where they need to have a smaller type of class size. So a hybrid, how about that?
Our favorite word.
I have just one other question, and the others may also have additional questions, but I guess, Derrick, I think you're first on this. How do you hold people accountable? How do you, or organizations accountable? What is your approach to doing that?
Accountability really starts with relationship building for me. If you don't have that relationship to have those open, honest conversations, and then understanding what actually is going on versus what's hearsay, or so you actually know what to talk about, what to address. And so you start with those conversations and building the trust with those folks around you. And then you can start to have those hard discussions and holding people to the feet to the fire. I think once you go outside those parameters, it gets unhealthy. And I've seen people where they haven't studied or asked the right questions, and they go right into a situation for correction, and not have all the information, or at least as much information as they can. So I think it's important to do that, to foster your relationships, and then hit those head on. You cannot just let things fester. I'm one of those persons that say, hey, if there's a situation or issue, we need to talk about it now, because down the line it could blow up on you, basically turn worse. So I'm about making sure that we have those conversations early, and then look at ways to prevent things from happening in the first place. And like I said, that goes with the relationship building part. So you don't even have to have some of those hard conversations if you've already done the work up front. When it's passed and you haven't got a chance to do that, like I said, you need to make sure that you correct it right away, let people know what you're thinking, and not hide behind words or innuendos, that there's a clear understanding of that. So that's how I would approach it.
Great, thank you. And Patty, same question for you. How would you go about holding the district accountable?
Holding the district accountable.
Or the superintendent?
Well, the first thing is to get accurate information about, well, hopefully accurate, I guess, get information from people about what's going on. And then be able to compare it to what you expected, and then talk to people about it, and talk to people about it openly. And I remember like in staff meetings, people would say, let's not go out and have parking lot conversations after the meeting, which meant we're going to talk about the things that bothered you in the meeting that you didn't bring up. You're going to be sure you discuss them in the meeting, so everybody hears what's going on and everybody hears what you're thinking. So I guess, first of all, you have to have a way to get the information, and then discuss it with everybody involved.
Great, thank you. Laura or Julia, either one of you have more questions?
Well, I could finish with just a really quick one, which is about perennial question about instructional days. Oregon has one of the shortest school years in the nation. I'm just wondering if you would support adding instructional days to the calendar, which is something that the Portland Association of Teachers would be certain to have some concerns about.
And maybe Patty go first on
Oh,
this one?
sorry.
Yes, I think I would like to add days to the calendar. And then it would need, obviously, to be discussed with the union. And of course, then that means we have to figure out where our money is. So it would be a big discussion, but I think we could use more days.
Thank you.
For me, I'm not in support of just adding days for just to add them. If it's necessary, that's one thing. So what are your measurements or instruments to measure the type of learning our students are getting? Is it adequate enough? Just to add days for them just to come in, that's not a good business model for anything, right? So I understand where the teachers might have some pushback, but if we're looking at standards and our students are underachieving, what's going on for them to be continually being underachieving? So those are the things I would want to make sure I'm looking at before you start saying, okay, will more days just added on will help the situation. It may make it worse.
Thank you.
Great.
Can I
Oh,
I just
sorry.
had one last follow-up question, just because I was curious, since you mentioned it, Patty. You had said that you signed up late, that you right, or close to the deadline, very close to the deadline. I'm just curious why that was.
Well, Derrick's heard this before, but it was a combination of things. I was just listening to the radio in the car, and it said there were school board positions open. And I know from reading that often people come and apply for school board positions who are fairly right-wing and try to get into government that way in elections that people aren't paying much attention to. And I thought, ooh, I don't want that to happen. And then I happened to be at a meeting with a group from Surge, Showing Up for Racial Justice, that I belong to. And we were listing things that were important to us in a non-racist society. And of course, one of the things was schools in my list. And then we were supposed to think about a place where we could actually make a difference. And I thought, oh, school, I could go for the school board. So I went down and applied for the school, and then I told my friends that I was going to do that, so I was committed. So there I was, and I went and signed up. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I would really like to be involved in this, kind of the next step in being involved in education. So that's where I am. And luckily, I didn't have to worry about a right-wing person. So that was nice. But so that's how it was really last minute. And I didn't even know if anybody else was, well, actually, I thought a lot of people would be running. I didn't realize that so many people don't run for school board. I think there's the other 3 positions are unopposed. So it's interesting.
Depends where you live. There are many contested races in Oregon this year, just not in Portland.
Yeah.
Great. Well, why don't we have, if you want to just give like a brief closing about, why you're running and why you think people should vote for you. I guess, should we start with Patte, since I guess Derrick, you went first last time on that.
Okay, well, you've heard me for a while talk about how I feel about education, what I think is important. I feel like I would do a good job of learning about what's going on, of making decisions with the other board members. I am excited about the possibility, and I just hope you'll consider voting for me. Thank you.
Thank you. And Derrick?
Yeah, so I've had conversations with people in the community, even upwards to 8 months ago. Community leaders approaching me about a possible opening for a school board, and then conversations with the actual school board members. And so just having that confidence that other people have confidence in me to step forward and be a valuable person on the school board was inspiring to me. And knowing that a lot of the things that when I ran for sheriff actually dovetail or layer into the school board to be able to be effective is extremely important. So I started this quite a while ago, and as you can notice, I got a lot of endorsements and support, and I'm extremely proud of that. I believe Portland is in a crisis right now, and I think our students and our schools are stuck right in the middle of it. And it's going to take all hands on deck, the community, government leaders, school board, to step into these places to make sure we're resolving and addressing the issues. I believe in paying it forward, just as a lot of people when I was youth did the same thing, inspired me as a youth. And I really would say that I'm the person I am today because of those sacrifices and those things that people did. So I'm stepping up because I love to pay it forward. I love kids. I've always been around them and teaching, and love teaching moments, especially like I said in sports. I've been doing that for quite a while. So, go ahead.
Sorry.
That's good enough.
Okay, great. Thank you both so much. This was a really great conversation. We really appreciate your making time on this gorgeous, sunny, rare afternoon to talk to us.
Yes.
I'm going to
I was
stop
just
the
going
recording.
to I was just going to say to both of you, I sent out both of you today an email with a candidate questionnaire, and I hope you'll take the time to fill that out. It's a nice opportunity to speak directly to voters without a filter. Sorry, Helen.
Oh, no problem.
I saw that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.